Welcome everybody, my name is Manuel Martinez and this is another episode of Career Downloads where I hit the refresh button every week and bring on a new guest to have them talk about their career, lessons that they've learned, any tips and tricks that they've learned along the way. And today I have with me Matthew Wedlow. So Matthew has a background in networking. He's co-authored a book. He's also done a little bit of teaching in his, at some point during his career. So thank you, Matthew, for coming on.
No, thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Appreciate it. So get started. So what I've been kind of asking a couple people is just give me a little bit background on you and kind of where you grew up and, are you originally from Vegas?
Okay. Yeah. So I've lived in Vegas most of my life.
Okay.
Been here since I was a little kid, but I was born in Japan. Come from a military family.
Okay.
So family worked overseas, went to Korea, went after Japan, and then we came to California, and then we came to Vegas. But since then, I've been here for most of the time. I did leave for a job for a few years in North Carolina and came back. But yeah, that's the
start of it.
That's the skinny.
All right, cool. So, and when you started out, did you go to college for IT or did you even go to college at all?
Yeah. So I went to college 4 times, dropped out twice.
And finally decided to complete it? Or?
I didn't know. I mean, at the time, pressure, society, teachers, everyone pushes you to go to school. But even if you don't know what you want to do, or if you don't have any aims or goals, like just school, no matter what. So I went to school and hated it. I think the first degree I picked was just computer science, which I loved the computer science part of it. I liked the math. I liked the tech part. But there's all this other education that is completely unrelated. You have to do philosophy, you have to do English, you have to do, all these prereqs. And that killed it for me, and I just lost motivation. And two separate times I dropped out.
Okay.
I did end up finishing eventually. I did go back. I did get a bachelor's in IT, and even I have associates in IT as well.
Got it.
But it took me a while to get there.
And so when you said, you dropped out, what were you doing in between there? So you dropped out and decided to start working?
Yeah, just working normal jobs, like here in Vegas, so working at the casinos. I think my longest job at the time was a busboy, where I was at one of the local casinos for like 4 years, which at the time was like a dedicated job. And it was really easy, and the money was good enough where I was, at that age, it was good enough to pay for my toys and living at home, living the good life. And I actually met an IT guy at the casino, and funny, you know him as well, one of our mutual friends over the years. He was in IT. I started talking to him, and he set me down the path. I didn't even know what IT meant until I started talking to him, and he let me kind of shadow him at work. And I think that's what really kickstarted it, and that's when I went back to school, got some certs, and history from there.
Nice. So when you were shadowing him at work, is this during your working hours? Were you doing this outside of?
A little bit of both, actually.
Oh, really?
It started just being curious. We had the same coworkers, so a bunch of guys, like the engineering guys. We were the food and beverage team, the food and beverage guys, and then the IT guys. But I didn't really know what they did. They go in and out of secret rooms that are unlabeled. They always had they had every key to the whole building, like that giant janitor key ring. They always looked clean. They dressed up. They were just different. Like, what do those guys do? So I just, one day, his name was Chance. Talked to Chance. Like, what do you guys do? And he's like, you know what? Like, when are you off? I said, whatever day it was. He's like, just come in. Just come in when I'll be there that day, and I'll let you follow me around. So he just let me follow him around on one of my off days. And he's showing me all the MDFs, the data centers, all the stuff. And I don't understand anything. It's all over my head, but I'm pretending oh, yeah, I get it. No problem. I do this stuff all the time. And then he kind of let me know that, hey, I'm going to quit. I'm actually quitting this job in 6 weeks. So if you want, I can tell you're interested. If you want, I can't get you the job, but I can get you an interview. So if you want to just shadow me until I quit on your own time, you can work your job, but then come over here and work with me. I was like, hell yeah.
Nice.
Again, I didn't even know what he did. I didn't understand it. He was logging into switches and routers and stuff and making configuration changes, and it just right over my head. but it seemed interesting and it seemed real versus the stuff I was doing in school was like programming, coding for boring apps at the time. It didn't have the same immediate effect. Like you make some configuration changes and you can see it in the casino. Something changed. Those slot machines now all report differently, or they had that red light at the top. Now that's gone. I don't know what he did, but he fixed it. And yeah, so it was basically an internship unofficially.
Okay, nice. And then, were you able to pick up enough skills during that 6 weeks for the interview, or how did
I got the interview, but he didn't hire me.
I got it.
So yeah, that was my first letdown of many. I was jumping in too deep. He was right. I didn't have the skills. I still didn't know very much at all. I had started studying for the Net Plus, the CompTIA, like one of the big three, A Plus, Net Plus, Security Plus.
Right.
And I hadn't gotten it yet, but interview, I thought it went well, but he's like, he told me right away. Like he didn't make me wait. He's like, you just don't have enough experience. Like, if you can go out and get some experience, we'll hire you because you already work for the same company. So they hired some other guy. Something happened with that other guy. I don't know what. I don't think I ever met him, but he ends up quitting like about 3 months later. And that manager said, you know what, let's take a shot on Matt. So he gave me a call one day. He said, have you been studying? Did you get that cert? I was like, yeah. And I had. In that time, I had gotten it at that point. He's like, if you come in for another interview, we'll give you another shot. And from there, he hired me. So nice. I just persistence, having a good attitude, and getting a cert when I said I was going to do it. I didn't even have a job, so I did it all on my own. It worked out. That was my first real job.
And what was the process, especially not having any experience or not really understanding? How did you study and prepare for that first certification? Was it just
a physical book? Okay. Like paperback. One of the I can't remember the author, but he's one of the like big ones that everyone knows about, like Messer, or I forget the names. But I would just bring the book to work, read it. I would ask people questions if I didn't understand it, and I would use forums. This is back before like Reddit was that's the everything forum now. So I think Tech Exams was a popular forum. It's still there, and it was just people talking about their careers. And everyone who was on the networking path would say, I did this. I did this cert, and then I got this job, and then I got this pay. And they would just outline their whole careers. And I was like, I'm just going to follow somebody who's doing it successfully. So I copied the books that they studied, and that's how I got the cert. But I didn't have any hands-on. I didn't, other than what I did with Chance in that internship. It was all just in my head theory. So the fact that they gave me a chance. I was able to learn so much just by doing the job once I got in.
Okay. And how long were you in that role before you think you felt comfortable enough to say, okay, I now understand, at least to do the job?
Oh, man, it was pretty quick. So that job was like everything that plugs into the casino you fix. So the small stuff, printers, desktop computers, you have to fix that, to the big stuff, firewalls, ASAs, routers, switches, network configuration, everything. And then the hypervisor stuff, which to me, that was new. That was like new at the time. This was like 2012. So VMware had just kind of hit its stride. It became the dominant hypervisor. And I didn't, that was the area I was weak on. So other than that, I was pretty strong on the networking and desktop support side. And then the Windows server domain stuff, like just in 1 year. I felt so good. I felt so good that I actually quit.
Oh, really?
After 1 year, yeah.
And when you quit after that 1 year, obviously you went into a different role. What is it that made you say, all right, I'm done? Or what made you propel and say, hey,
I got big-headed. In that 1 year, so I got the Net Plus cert before I even started. But since I got hired for about 12, it was literally almost to the day, about 12 months, I'd gotten 4 different certifications. One was in Windows Server 2012. Another one was some Windows programming, like C++ or .NET, something like that. And then 2 Cisco certs. So once I got those Cisco certs, I got the CCNA and then the CCNA Security. I just felt like I was better. Like I totally wasn't, but I thought I was like I could do anything. I was like so big, and I I just jumped out. I quit without even having a job. I just had a few interviews that hadn't accounted to anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to quit. Because the numbers they were throwing out were like 50% raise. I was like, I can do this. I don't need to get slowed down. So I put my 2-week notice in. Bad move. Definitely don't quit until you have something. But it ended up working out. But I wouldn't recommend that strategy.
Got it. So one of those interviews did pan out, and you were able to move on to the next one?
Every one of them. I was 3 different interviews, and all 3 gave me offers, and I just took the highest paying one.
Okay.
And then once I got in, I realized I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. And once I was actually doing pure networking, I was like, I don't understand this stuff as well as I thought I did. Like the stuff I had to do at the casino was very simple compared to the stuff that they expected me to do at this new job. I think the title was network specialist, and I had to learn it kind of on the spot. Okay. Which honestly, I think that should be how you do it. You shouldn't be perfectly qualified for every job. If you're overqualified, you'll probably quit or get bored. I think every job should be a little bit ahead of your level. That way, it pushes you to get there. But you should go in there knowing that, where I didn't know. I thought I was the man, but I wasn't. Not yet.
And in that role, how many other network specialists or how many other network people?
Nothing. I was expected to be the SME, the expert on everything. So anything networking came to me, and that's when I knew I didn't know. Like they're asking me questions that they got further than I would have got. Like some of my other team who did like different areas. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, and I just had to go figure it out. So kind of, drinking from the fire hose, just jump in and use all the resources you have available to you and learn it. And, when someone's breathing down your neck talking about we're losing money, you learn pretty quick, like how it needs to work. And yeah, that was a tough one.
So how long were you in that role before you mentioned in the last one, it took you about a year to say, okay, I feel comfortable. I know everything now. And now in this role, how long did it take before you're like, okay, I feel comfortable to at least do my job here?
How long? I'd say about 3 months. Okay. And I know that seems fast, right? I'm saying how underqualified I was, and in 3 months I got it all. But at the time, I was really career focused. Like my goal was always, I was looking 5 years ahead. So I would take certification training videos, like back in the day, CPT Nuggets was like the cool. Remember CPT Nuggets? And I would convert them into MP3, and I would listen to them as I drive. And this is back when you had to drive to work. So I'm listening to tech all day. I listen to podcasts, Packet Pushers, Security Weekly, things that interested me that I wanted to do later. And I would just absorb everything. I'd go home, waste a little bit of time, but I would just study. My job, my goal at the time was to get ahead. So I wouldn't really take time off. I would just try to improve. If I couldn't figure something out at work, I just stay at work until it's fixed. I'm not like, oh, it's 5 o'clock, time to go home. Nope, we haven't fixed it yet. Just work until it's done, or work until you understand it. So that way, tomorrow when you get on the phone with this guy, you can explain it, and you're not on the spot. And yeah, about 3 months, I felt really confident. It was like a small MSP. They had like lawyers, different businesses around town, like smaller businesses, where we would just do everything for them. And a lot of their networking stuff was VPNs. And when I got hired, I couldn't explain what a VPN was. And after a few months, I could configure every single one of them.
Yeah, and it does seem like a short amount of time, but if you're putting in that amount of hours, right, staying in extras, doing all this extra study time, so it's not like, oh, in 3 months of 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, you picked up all these skills.
No, it was almost all day, every day. Maybe take a day off on the weekend, but I knew I wasn't there, so I wanted to be I wanted to be what my title said. So I wanted to make sure. I didn't want in NIT, a lot of us have imposter syndrome. We think we're wrong. We start doubting ourselves. We think everyone knows more than us. So I wanted to make sure that I knew what I said I knew, and I wanted to be the guy you go to when you had a question. So I would go and learn the different customers' environments and just poke around, just SSH into everything, figure out how it worked, start making diagrams. That way I can explain it when the other guy calls, hey, we're having this domain issue. I'm like, oh, this is how it's configured.
Got it. Okay. And outside of, so I know with networking, it's a little bit different. You're watching videos, you're listening to podcasts, you're doing all this. Mm-hmm. Are you, at any point, did you set up any type of home lab, or is there anywhere where you could kind of tinker without actually messing with production?
Yeah, it took, I would say this, not in that job.
Okay.
It was probably a few years later. I had a pretty serious home lab. Because still, this was like Cisco was kind of coming out of favor. They were like dominant early 2000s. Like Cisco, before that was Microsoft. You had any like MCSE cert, Microsoft was like gold. You can get any job you wanted. And then early 2000s, Cisco was kind of that guy. If you had CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, those were like just printing money. You can just go and demand whatever job you wanted. But that was starting to fall away. So Juniper was coming up. The next gen firewalls were coming out. So Cisco was kind of out the door. And when that happened, a lot of their gear got cheap, like the hardware, the physical gear. And some jobs just give it to you. Some places, we have this lab equipment that just comes home with you sometimes. And I started to have a pretty good rack. I still have the rack with some like 2960s and ASAs, and then I started adding firewalls to it. And then I saw the suggestion on one of those forums that like put your network on it. Make your house depend on this. Don't just have this theoretical lab that doesn't matter. Actually make it work in your house. Because you'll learn real fast that like PlayStation Network doesn't work on this switch. And you have to figure out why. Like what's different about my home router than this enterprise router? Why would it not work? And it's a big problem. So I got to play my games. So we got to fix this router.
We're losing money. Wow. Okay. And then obviously you continue on, and I think it's interesting so that you had kind of like a 5-year plan. So during that time, did you know that, hey, networking and security, that's what you wanted to do the whole time? I mean, it was
not the security part.
Okay.
That was still kind of I didn't understand it that well.
Okay.
I would say if we're talking OSI models, I was still layer 3 only. Like layer 2 and layer 3 is where I lived. I didn't understand, I did some basic firewall stuff and VPNs, but I didn't understand like if you ask me what a next gen firewall is versus just a stateful firewall, I couldn't explain it. So the networking side, yes, I literally just looked at people that were successful in networking and tried to copy their careers. And then I fell into network or security and found it to be much more profitable. Also, it kind of requires disciplines that are outside of networking. Like if you're just thinking of pure routing and switching, IP addresses and MAC addresses, it's not the same as thinking of what does the application need to function. And once you start thinking about the app itself, because that's where the money is, the applications are what brings the money in. So if you can get as close to the app as you can, I think from a job security and just, job demand, there's a lot more money in it.
Okay.
But that was a few years later when I realized that.
All right. So then you're doing this role. At what point do you say to yourself, okay, I'm ready to go on to the next one? So I know you're trying to copy everybody else's path, but in there, are they also saying, hey, I spent X amount of time in this role before you're moving on?
Yeah.
Oh, is that detailed?
At that point, I started participating myself. I started telling other people, hey, I'm new, but this is what I've done so far. I'm 3 jobs in only a few years, and here's my experience, here's my certs. I don't have it. At that time, I still hadn't finished school.
So you went back to school at this time and you're
It was
doing
actually
both?
right around there, yeah. I was like, you know what, let me just go finish school. And I found WGU, and they did a program where most of the classes were certs. And that's what I wanted. That's why I liked it. And they'd pay for them. So you pay tuition to the school, and then to pass the class, you just have to get a certification. And that's like the final exam, pass the cert. But they'll pay for it. So I was like, it's a win-win. I'm gonna get a degree and a bunch of certs for basically the same cost of if I just got the certs. So I think the price went up since then. But at the time, it was a really good deal. And they had a thing where if you passed the class, but the semester wasn't over, you could add another class. If they had a counselor that would come in and see like, there's not enough time. But if there was enough time, you could just add more classes and not have to pay more. So you could basically like fast forward your own degree program, get a bunch of stuff knocked out in one semester, get all these certs. So my resume went from like Net Plus and like my Microsoft certs to like 15 certs and a degree. And I think I finished it in 1 year, the program, because I had some college from when I dropped out that carried over. So in 1 year, I got a degree, a bunch of certs, and I think the certs really helped me a lot. So I was able to quit that network specialist job and go to the school district.
Okay.
Went to the school district out here, which it might have been a bad move at the time, but the plan was to get in at the district and then join their network team, and that worked out. But once I got there, I realized that they outsource everything. Like most of their complicated stuff, like they were doing deployments at the switch data centers, and they just outsourced it. And I didn't, at the time I didn't understand it. Like, you have a team, why are you paying third parties to come in and do it? And that's when I learned about liability. Like, they don't want to get blamed. If anything goes wrong, they can just point at the other company and say they did it. So if there's an outage, if the school grading system goes down, they did it. And I didn't like that. I get the the legal mindset of it, but from a worker's perspective, I didn't like that, so I quit. So if you can't tell, I definitely did a lot of job hopping.
Yeah.
And but I made sure the job hopping was always a step up. Not job hopping to similar roles. It was always more responsibility, hopefully more money, and more a prestigious title, I would say. So going from desktop support to network specialist to network engineer and beyond.
And I'm assuming this time when you quit, you made sure that there was something already in line, paper signed before going through.
This time I learned my lesson. Wait till I get the job. Yeah, and I admit it did burn some bridges. Some people were upset. Like, you've only been here 6 months.
Oh, so it was
what
a
do you
short
mean?
time frame.
A lot of them. I mean, I'm even skipping over some.
Sure.
Just to be concise. Yeah, a lot of them were short, but I mean, I would always just be upfront. Like, say, this isn't what I thought it would be. We're doing this project. I would basically what I just told you. I would explain to them upfront, like, I want to do it. I want to do these cool stuff. That's why I joined the team. But we don't do it. We're just coming in behind them, troubleshooting after the fact, which is, I don't know, it's not as fun, not as sexy. So just let them know, and then I would get an offer for somewhere at a higher pay, at a better title, and it's hard to argue when somebody comes in like, someone else is going to pay me more with a better role. They're like, all right, well, we can't match that. So
We can't match that, and we can't also match,
we can't change your job.
Right.
Yeah, we can't give you a new role that doesn't exist.
Interesting. All right. So then, as you're going through and you're still participating in these forums and kind of laying out careers and helping out, as you're going through and you're doing your job hopping, how are you picking out these jobs? Is it just, are you searching for them? Are you reaching out to people to say, hey, is there anything available? Like, what's that process that you kind of went through, especially kind of moving around? Because I'm sure those guys that are telling you like, hey, this is what I did. They're not like, hey, go apply here or go apply there.
Yeah, this is all over the world. I don't know these people. They're not being that specific. So a lot of it was just me searching locally. At that time, remote work wasn't the norm yet. So I was just looking here in town, and a lot of jobs would post. Even LinkedIn was kind of new. I think I had one, like early LinkedIn, but it wasn't what it is today. So a lot of jobs weren't on there. Recruiters weren't on there. It was more of just a online resume. So it was a lot of just job postings locally. And I would just talk to them, and I would tell them like, hey, I would just always be upfront with what I'm looking for, and always be upfront with the price range, like what pay am I looking for, and get that out of the way. I don't want to go through a whole interview process, get some lowball offer. So I would tell them upfront, this is what I'm looking for. If we're not in this range, then there's no point in us wasting our time. And almost everyone would agree with that. Some people don't like talking numbers early, but I would always talk early.
And is that something you picked up just on your own, again, from these groups? Because that's something that I made the mistake, at least at first when I was kind of moving on. Salary wasn't something that was brought up early on, right? I kind of went through a couple of interviews, and then to get there, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is not what I was expecting. And they're like, oh, what were you expecting? And they try to go back and lowball something that it took me a while, and then eventually I was like, okay, hey, what's the range?
Yeah.
So
I think a little bit of both. A little bit of just going through doing that job hopping. I kind of saw the process, and I did get caught off guard a few times. So I just realized there's no downside to just talking about it up front. And I would read books. I can't remember the author's name, something Carnegie, but How to Win Friends and Influence People.
yes.
Very popular book. And then Never Split the Difference I can't remember the guy's name. I'm bad with authors.
Voss or something like that. Yeah,
As
I've
far
read
as
the
you know,
book as well.
Yeah. And it's just more about how to talk to people, how to have conversations. So I would never be mean about like numbers, or I'd bring it up in a way that makes sense for both of us. Usually, like, let's not waste our time. You want to hire somebody. I want to get paid. What's the mutual thing that we both need? Well, we have to agree on numbers. So nothing else matters if that number doesn't match. So I would, tactfully question that right away. First talk about the job. What's the job? But usually I get on a quick call with manager or recruiter or whoever I'm talking to, and hammer out the numbers. And usually they're like, "This is good." Like, and a lot of times they don't even know their numbers. Like, they don't have it. So it would just be like, "Oh, we'll have to find out later." Or a lot of times I don't know what their job could say this, but that's not what the job is. So I don't even know how to put a number on that yet. So they'll try to throw it at you, like, what number are you looking for? And play that negotiation game. And I always try to get them to say it first. But yeah, that was definitely something I just learned by job hopping, I think.
And do you think doing that, did it help you not only land roles, but kind of, at some point you're earning a reputation, especially when you're just, again, there's no remote work, you're doing a lot of this internally.
Yeah.
Do you think that ability to be able to go through and say, hey, up front, again, not being mean about it, did it help you land some of these roles, you think?
I don't think so, no. I don't think it helped. I think it helped me learn my own value. Like, I knew, a lot of people you don't know what you're worth. Like, I knew what my labor was worth, very, like, almost to the dollar, because I'm shopping it around and no one's paying up here, everyone's paying above that. So I'm probably right there in this middle number. And knowing that number means I could look for it. I could specifically say, other people are, like, I could tell a potential employer, this is what everyone else is paying, because I actually talked to them. And we negotiated, and here's the email. So I knew, like, what I was worth at the time, which I think a lot of people don't have that advantage. A lot of people don't really go looking for jobs all the time. They're secure, they're happy where they are. There's not a bad thing. But me, I was always looking. I always felt like I could get fired at any point, and I'm trying to move ahead. So I constantly was updating my resume and talking to potential employers. So I knew what I was worth, which is a good feeling when I know, I can quit at any point and go here. If things don't work out, if this business fails, I can just go over there. Where a lot of people don't know that. They're caught off guard if something like that, something bad happens.
No, that's good, because it sounds like you learned that early on. I think for me, knowing my worth and my value, and then also what my bottom is.
Yep.
Right? Because at some point,
I don't want to go
said,
under. Yeah.
Yeah. If company goes under or something happens,
you need a job.
You need a job. You
might just take the first thing, but what's that? What's that bottom number? Yeah.
What's that floor number? Okay.
Yeah. And I learned at the time Vegas was actually kind of untapped tech-wise. We were considered by, like, the big companies to be a dead space for talent. Like, you just overlook Vegas. If you have a Vegas company, you outsource tech because there's nobody there, which they were wrong. There's a lot of solid talent out here, especially now. And being that guy that you're shopping yourself around, you're kind of letting these recruiters, these employers know that there's people out there, and they got to pay if they want them. And once outsourcing fails, like it always does, then they know that this is what the market's looking for. And it's come up quite a bit. At the time, this is 10 years ago, Vegas paid a little less than a lot of the surrounding areas, like Phoenix, LA, obviously the California stuff pays a lot more. But it's not that gap has gotten a lot smaller now.
Right. No, I would 100% agree with you there. So then now you've kind of moved around, you're going through, you're understanding your worth. What's kind of the next step, or how are you kind of continuing to progress now? So now at this point you are like a network engineer, almost a network architect at some point, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think at that time around this point I was like admin level administrator. So I wasn't designing brand new networks yet, but I was managing them. So usually, you inherit somebody else's network. You come into a business or multiple businesses. So that's a pretty senior role, I would think, at least at the time. Just under, I would say, 6 figures was about the pay. Again, this is 10 years ago. So that was good money. I thought I was, I'm thinking I'm good. I was way ahead of my 5-year plan, way ahead. So I was thinking I was doing pretty good. And that's when security hit me. Found out about, you know, the company I worked at the time was a managed security provider, and we sold network services and we sold security services. And security services made a lot more money. When I mean for the business. Like they could sell that to customers for way more than they could sell us. And when I would talk to the security guys, I felt like they didn't know anything. Like I felt like I knew more than them just in general. Like they couldn't explain. They're looking at like security alerts and just looking at like a SIM output and then sending that somewhere to sell someone else to fix it. But they didn't understand the technology behind it. So I felt like they were referees that didn't understand the rules of the game. And that's when I realized, but they're getting paid more. And they're able to command more money because like cybersecurity was hot at the time. This is like 2015-ish, around that time window. So I was like, I need to learn what they learn and have both. Learn, like I can do all the infrastructure from layer 1 all the way to layer 7. So started doing, I started just handling customer issues that were security focused. The work was there. I just wasn't focusing on it before. And now I started focusing primarily on that. Ended up working with a customer in North Carolina. They liked me so much that they asked me to come on site and be their dedicated, basically engineer through the provider. I was still working for the MSP,
Oh, okay.
but they wanted me on site. And this was my big negotiating moment. So the customer wants me on site across the country, and they have a contract with us, and my company couldn't fill that role. They didn't have anyone that they could send out there. The customer's asking for me. So like I'm in a good position where I can demand a lot of money. So I did. I basically said, well, I want you to pay me what I'm getting paid now plus my wife's salary, because I don't know what work options she would have. We're gonna have to move and relocate, plus like, you know, add a couple percent for cost of living and stuff because they have state tax out there. Like I did a little math, did my research, and just made sure I had my negotiation all pre-planned out. Like go a little bit too high at first, they're gonna counter too low, and then we'll meet right where I really want. And I messed up. That too high number, they agreed to right away. Which at first I was happy, right? Like, yeah. But then I was like, man, if they agreed to that right away, their number was actually way higher. But I was stuck. We agreed, but it was a good raise. Ended up moving to North Carolina, working with that customer. They were great. I still have lifetime friends out there. But now I was a security guy. I was doing nothing but firewalls, load balancers, proxies, like stuff in between the network and the app, like the stuff that makes it work. And again, I was able to bridge both sides of the network side, the infrastructure side, and the application side. And I think there's a lot of gold in that sweet spot.
And do you think, and I want to get what you think on this. So you mentioned these guys, and I've come across people in roles where they are security specialists, right? But again, that's all they've ever done.
That's all they know.
Do you think that a lot of what kind of sets you apart and what kind of helped you move along is, you mentioned you started with printers and, anything connected to it, basically a network jack, and kind of having, your Microsoft certifications and doing all that. Do you think at first even though you were a network specialist, having that kind of broad, kind of jack of all trades type of experience?
I think that first being open to it. Some people are like, I'm a specialist, this is all I do. And they don't want to even explore how anything else works. Where I came the other way. I was jack of all trades, and then I went into a specialty and realized that it's actually better to have a specialty that requires a lot of different things. So yeah, I think definitely I would recommend anyone trying to find a career in this space is to learn as much as you can for all different things, because it's all similar and it's all connected in different ways. If you're a Linux administrator, you have to configure the network. You have to configure firewall rules. You have to configure the different services and roles and permissions. Like there's so many things that overlap. If you can understand that, and then understand, what does it mean if I create this user that's a super user in Linux? And what does that mean for a network? Does that mean someone can connect remotely as a super user? If you hadn't thought of that, or you didn't have that perspective, you might have this glaring security issues that you're creating by not understanding it. So I would say try to learn as much as you can for the different things. Now, there's too much for everybody to know, obviously.
Right.
But there's a lot of like staples, I would say, basic information that I think most people should know if you're going to go for these more senior jobs.
Yeah, and I've had that experience, especially as I kind of moved up into more engineer, architect roles, where a lot of times I was dealing with other people, and I was able to kind of bridge the gap in between a lot of this, because at one point I thought I wanted to do, I didn't have such a kind of laid out plan like you did. I went in, I started as a help desk, then desktop. And then at one point I was like, I want to be a networking guy. I did that for a little bit. That's not what I want to do. I want to be a database person. So I played around a lot of it, tried a lot of different areas. Eventually I found that infrastructure was what I wanted, but it made it easier when I was having conversations when I would say, hey, we're having problems with the network. And I don't know if this is kind of your experience. Most times they're like, everybody will blame the network, right? It's, oh, it's a network guy. Oh, it's a network, it's a network.
Long running joke.
But I went through and I was able to go through, hey, I think it's a network and here's why, right? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, tech, it's its own language and everybody speaks the same, but a security person speaks a different language than, a server person, than a network person. So I think having that common understanding is really helpful.
You're totally right. I think being able to speak the language is more than is enough. As a minimum, if you can speak to the server admin guy and understand how the basics of Windows servers or Linux servers work, where you can explain a problem, and that way he knows that you're not just saying it's the server, but if someone's saying, oh, this connection doesn't work, and you can prove that the connection is working, but it's probably the services not running on the server, and this is why, and this is how, and you show that, I think that it earns you a lot of respect from the other teams. Like, oh, he actually knows. He explained it. He kind of did my work for me, and he told me where to look. And so, oh yeah, I had to restart that service. So I 100% agree there.
All right, so as you're kind of going in now and you've moved over to North Carolina, are you focusing now more just on security, or you're still kind of doing both network and security for them?
It's still, I mean, they go hand in hand, but I would say primarily I was like security infrastructure at that point.
Okay.
So again, firewalls, load balancers, proxies, VPNs, and then web application firewalls. So like the ingress of the network, like when you're first coming into whatever organization, you got to hit a bunch of things. That's usually the edge is where my work was now.
Okay.
And then there was always a network team I worked with, and we had to work together. But I wasn't doing like routing and switching anymore. It was just all pure security infrastructure.
Okay. How long did you end up staying there in that role in North Carolina? That's it, 1 year, huh?
Yeah, 1 year. And a great job. We actually liked it there. We want to move back. But I ended up getting a remote position that this was my first architect role. This was through a friend from the same company. He quit, went somewhere, and he said, hey, we need another architect from the security side. He worked with me. We had a good relationship. We're friends. I can get you an interview. I'm like, yeah. Like, there's win-win-win, and it's work from home. That was my first work from home job. And they flew me out. Limo picks you up. I was like, man, this is the big leagues now. Limo picks you up from the airport, takes you to the hotel. They give you like itinerary. Your interview's at this time. You're going to meet this person. Here's a picture of them. I was like, man, like I really want this job now. And I got it. They hired me, and I was working remote in North Carolina for a little while. Had some family stuff back here. So we moved back because I was remote. I didn't need to work there. We moved back just to be close to family. But I still had the same job, so I was still working remote. Just went back home, and was there for a couple of years. Architect. I mean, that was literally, hey, we have this new building. It's empty. We haven't even designed the building yet, and we need you to come in and design how the infrastructure works. And again, that was still a little bit over my head. Like I hadn't done that yet. I hadn't done the full design from nothing, like from scratch. So, but that's where I always want to be, a little bit out of my league. That way, I'm forced to learn it and get there, and lean on. We had a good team. We all worked together, came up with some good designs, And I think those data centers are still functioning.
You haven't heard of any hacks going on in there?
No big hacks yet.
So, and that's interesting because I know earlier on you touched about the kind of like that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had, you were pretty comfortable being uncomfortable and kind of pushing yourself. Did you ever have that feeling? And the reason I ask is because that's not something I've experienced. I've heard about it. I understand how it works,
No,
but I think,
rare.
but I think it's more like you, right? Where I always felt, okay, I don't know it. Again, I'm pushing myself. I'm going to that next boundary, but I was always like, I had enough confidence in myself to know I'll figure it out. And similar to being, come in like, hey, I know what I know, and it's one of those things that early on in my career, and I really think the person that when I got into a desktop job, he's like, hey, do you know how to tone? Do you know how to do these things? And I didn't. And one of the first things he would ask me, and he's like, it's okay if you don't, right? So he made me very comfortable in saying, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And he would show me. And then he's like, okay, I've shown you, now you go and do it, and kind of pick it up. So he gave me the confidence to go through, and it's something that I always tell people, like, it's okay to not know something, right? Just, say, hey, I don't know. Hey, can you explain it to me? Or say, hey, I think it works this way, instead of what I feel some of the imposter syndrome, and again, this is just kind of my own opinion, is that you feel that people are expecting, I know what that is, when you really don't.
Oh, okay. I get your point of view.
That's my point of view.
It's not so much that. It's more, when I say imposter syndrome, I think, let's say you get on a technical troubleshooting call, and like there's some outage, so something big's going on, everyone's yelling, and someone says something that you think is incorrect, but they say it so confidently that you start to think maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe he's right, and I've been wrong this whole time, and I don't understand it as well as I thought I did. That's kind of where I'm at. So as people are explaining things or troubleshooting things, or even just talking about things, somebody might say something where you're scratching your head and you're not sure, but instead of you knowing that they're wrong, you start to think that you are wrong. Like, I must be wrong. He said that with such confidence that maybe I've been wrong this whole time. Let me go read into that.
Got
And
it.
you won't confront them. You'll wait. You'll start Googling. You're looking it up. You're reading your books. And so you feel like an imposter because this whole time I thought it worked like A, but he's saying it works like B, and I don't want to argue with him, so I'm just going to go look it up. So a lot of that's where I'm at. But I think you touched on a good point. You said it's okay to not know, 100%. I've interviewed so many times, and I keep a dump of all my interviews, and they're not exact, but it's pretty close, of every question I've asked. And the funny thing is, by the way, they get easier. And it's partially because you're better, like your skills are better. But I think there's just, with that imposter syndrome, there's not a lot of people up high that can even correctly interview people for the job. Like, obviously we're hiring for this role. That means there's nobody here that does it. So we don't have a good way to vet candidates. So it's kind of just a funny way that works out, like interviewing. But like you said, it's okay to not know. If you don't know, just always admit it up front. I don't know how that works. But here's how I'd figure it out. Like, I understand these things that are similar, or I've done this old version that probably doesn't apply anymore, but I've done it before. But I don't know, the new, latest, greatest, whatever version we're on now. Just admit it and then explain why that it's not a problem. It's okay to not know. Like, no one knows everything. You're asking me these trivial things. I'll just look it up. No problem. Imposter syndrome.
Okay, so that makes more sense now to me. And that confidence to kind of go through and figure it out. And again, is that something that do you think you always kind of had that mentality of, I will always figure it out? Or is it just like, hey, I'm just so determined to upskill?
Put a time limit on it. Okay. Have the mindset of, I can figure it out, but not at the expense of the job or the company. Like, if the company is losing money and you're stubborn and I'm going to figure it out, escalate. Like, if there is some way to escalate. Like, get other people involved that know more than you. You don't have to be the expert on everything. So it's an arbitrary number that you'd have to put on very, very situationally. Like, if a point of sale machine is down at a restaurant, but there's two other ones, not a big deal. Take your time, figure it out. If the hospital bed, like, heart rate monitor is down, don't try to figure it out. Like, get the guy that knows the heart rate monitor. Like, don't put someone's life on the line for you to be stubborn about learning something. So I don't think it's a personality thing. I think it's just judging the situation, knowing when can I have the luxury of figuring it out versus when do I not want to lose the company money because I don't want to call support.
Right, or I'm so determined to just figure it out and be the guy.
Don't be stubborn. Like, you can learn through someone else. You can watch the support guy do it and be like, oh, like it took me hours to get there. It took you 2 seconds, and now I know for next time, and I can learn similar things. Now I know where to look.
Okay, interesting. So as you're going through it, and that's something I've kept some of those dumps out of interviews, but I don't think I have like a running list. So usually I keep it for a while, and eventually I end up losing it or getting rid of it.
I keep them, man.
Interesting. I mean, that's probably a good tip to kind of go through. And most of what I remember a lot of the, there's specific questions that I know that I've remembered. There's a lot of them like, I don't know. Like if someone asked me probably a question that they asked me at some point, I probably wouldn't even remember.
You don't know anymore. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
That's cool. And is that something you would reference before your next interviews? Like just kind of go through those dumps?
We haven't really talked about prep. So interview prep is a huge thing. And I would say most of it, even just in general, it's more personality than it is tech, even though we're talking about technical roles. People have to work with you. People have to like you. So being likable and being able to fit in is a much more valuable trait than knowing every answer to every arbitrary question. Because a lot of interviews are just trivia. It's the interviewer didn't prep himself, so he's just rattling off things off his head or whatever problems he's working on that day. Like he's troubleshooting some routing loop, so he's asked you, how do you fix a routing loop? Literally, that is what happens. So it comes down to more personality. But for prep, I go through. I have basically a giant Excel spreadsheet with a million tabs on it, and one of the tabs is all my previous interviews. So I'll go through that, just kind of look it over. Like, what similar roles in the past? What did they ask me? What were they looking for? Then do your research. There's a lot of websites now that people go in and say, this is how my interview went at this company. And make sure you can at least see what their line of questioning is like. You might not get those exact questions, but you can see like kind of the type and have good answers for it. And I think it takes practice. It's like anything else. You can't just walk into an interview and you hadn't interviewed for 5 years and be good at it. Probably not. I would say I would practice. I would do it with myself, do it with my wife, do it with my friends and other coworkers, and we would do literally mock interviews and take them seriously. And it does help. It does work.
I would agree. So I've had a couple, so I do a lot of mentoring, and that's one thing that I brought up. That I've had people like, hey, I'm going to have an interview. What should I do? I was like, well, if you want, let's take 30 minutes right now and let's mock. And they were like, well, what do you mean? I was like, look.
They push back. They're like, why?
Yeah, why?
And
right? And we went through it.
Right after, they're like, that was good, because I didn't know what to say for half of that.
Well, and it was, because I think the first 10 minutes, like, I'd ask a question, and they were like, again, they're trying to take it serious, but they're giggling, like, I don't know, and or they would stumble. Hold on, let me start again. Okay, it's
get those out.
Probably similar to what you would do in an actual interview. And I've had a couple people afterwards come back and say, dude, that really helped. Sometimes I've gotten the job, sometimes I didn't, but they felt at least more confident going into it as opposed to it. Now, when you say you would interview by yourself, are you recording yourself, or are you just kind of talking out loud? Because it's one thing to, and again, these people have said, oh yeah, well, I looked at questions and I thought of answers, but I think it's completely different to actually verbalize them.
No, I 100% talk to myself all the time. On the drive over here, I was talking about some potential Manny questions that I might get and how I would answer them. I don't record myself. I don't know. I have a weird. I don't like the time. I don't like to rewatch the thing. So I just kind of just say it out loud. But I would never record myself. Still don't. But write down questions I think I'm going to get, or both personality based or like job based, and then the technical ones as well. Like, they're probably going to ask, what have you done that's similar to this? So make sure you have an answer. You don't want to like freeze up on the spot, even though you might have perfect answers. If you hadn't thought about it ahead of time, you might say it in a bad way or present it wrong. So just practice saying how you're going to say it, how you're going to word it. They might ask some negative questions, like me, I job hop. That's going to come up. How do I answer that when they're like, look here, you've had 8 jobs in 4 years. What's going on? Like, I need an answer. So if you put me on the spot, and I might just say, oh, more money. That's a bad answer. So have a good response. And I think doing that practice, absolutely gotten jobs where I was not as qualified as other candidates, just because I interviewed better.
Just those communication skills of being able to go through and
You got to read the room. You're talking to a person. Some people, there's different personality types. Some people are really technical. Some people are like confrontational. Some people are just pure managers and they don't know anything about anything. So you don't need to like harp on all the tech details with that person. Where the confrontational guy, you got to almost like lower the tension, joke about some things, make fun of like, he obviously doesn't like Linux, so make a joke about Linux, like stuff like that. You just got to be able to, on the spot, read the room and see what the other person wants to hear. And I think that's I think anyone can learn that. And that's what I did after that. I said the architect job, next job was sales.
Really?
Sales, and yeah, that was a good one.
What type of sales?
Pre-sales for pre-technical sales. So I worked at F5.
Okay.
They're mostly known for their load balancers, but they sell all security stuff. Like they try to rebrand themselves as a security company, but being able to do that read the room stuff was what I saw that ahead of time, and I was like, you know what, let me try my hand in sales and see how it goes, and it was great. Timing went bad with COVID, so all the fun sales perks of traveling around and going to steakhouses and bars every day that died down with COVID, but the sales part was fine. The job was great. The company was great. I definitely had a good time in sales, and I probably will go back. I probably will change hands and go back to sales because I liked it so much.
And what is it that you liked about it? Is it the interacting with people? Is it the actual selling part? Like what made it so enjoyable for it to you?
I think it's that you have to have a little bit of everything. So you have to know the tech, right? You're going to get into these calls. People they want your recommendations. They're expecting you to be the expert, and you're not. Trust me. Like, you have so many products, you don't know everything about everything. Half the stuff you're just looking up, or you're asking the guy behind you, "Hey, they asked me this on this call. What's the answer, real quick? Because he's asking me right now. So go." And you have to have the technical side and be the expert. Everyone assumes you know everything. That's why they're talking to you. So that kind of there's a little prestige there. It feels good. Like they're coming to you for recommendations when they might even know more, because they know their specific situation better than you do, but they want your recommendation. But then I like to travel. I like to sitting down with execs. It's a different game when you start talking to sales folks and like C-suite kind of people. It's a different vibe. Like their concerns are so different than the stuff I'm worried about. I'm worried about, is there enough throughput? Do we have enough memory? I'm thinking tech stuff. They're not thinking about that. They're like, is my thing going to go down? Are you going to cost me money later? Give me the peace of mind. And like you have to, okay, that's what they care about. I don't need to come in there spouting off stats. They don't care about specs and stats. They care about, is it going to work? And where are we going to play golf later?
Right.
And the golf part, I can never get any good at golf, but it's fun going out there and just being the free win.
So the stats that they're more worried about is things like, and this is probably things you would bring up, like, hey, here's our uptime, here's our, we're not vulnerable, those types of conversations.
If they're publicly traded, they care about their image a lot. So, and that's an angle I hadn't thought of before I was in sales. But when you're in sales, like you got your quarterly reviews coming up, your earnings meeting. Do you want to be on the news for a crypto malware hack? Probably not. So we got this thing. We got just the solution for that. We can sell you this add-on for low price of whatever. And I wasn't that guy. I usually come in after, like somebody's already made the pitch, and then I come in and talk about how it would work. But understanding that that's what they care about is a different mindset for me that I had to learn, and I think I like it a lot.
And how did you balance again, you just mentioned like, hey, we've got this thing, balancing that of, hey, I'm really trying to help, trying to earn your trust and make you understand that, hey, this is something that really is going to help you, as opposed to buy this thing because I'm in sales, right? Like
you got to get in. It's almost like you have to worm your way in and do some grunt work to earn that foot in the door. So some companies you already have, they're already buyers, like they're customers. Some customers are considered white space, where they don't have any of your stuff today. Maybe they're with a competitor, or maybe they have nothing. that does what you do. So to get into those stuff, you guys have to do proactive work on their behalf. Like we would use basically red teaming. We would scan our customers' network and say, look at all these holes. Like I'm talking low level stuff, not anything sophisticated, just basic script kiddie stuff. Run it against their public applications or websites and APIs, and we'd find a bunch of stuff and just tell them like, hey, you want to get on a call? We notice all these things, and then we'd give them solutions, and we'd even offer competitor solutions. Like here's how you can plug all these holes with just these things. If you want us to help, give me a call. I'll help you out. And almost 9 out of 10, they're like, let's get on a call. Like, whoa, I didn't know that. And then I'll bring in their architect. And then you got to realize now they're on the defense, especially the technical guy, because he's been put on the spot. Like, why do we have all these security vulnerabilities? So you now have to ease that. Like most of these are pretty, like you can't really exploit them. You almost have to like make sure he's not mad at you. Right. But then whatever executives or managers that you got on there, you have to show them that you can fix it. Like what's the path forward? Who cares how we got here? How do we get out of it? And give them that peace of mind. And again, offer. If your solution isn't the best, don't lie. We sell something that does it, and it would cost X amount of dollars, but there's an open source version that you can do right now if you want to just deploy it. Boom. But who knows how long it's going to last? They don't have support if you have a problem. So you have options. And again, usually they go with you because they like that upfrontness. Right. And they like, now they can ask me something. Remember earlier I mentioned liability? A lot of companies love that. Like that's always, they're like, will you do it? Will your company do it? Not me, myself. Right. Can we pay your company to come in and do this? Yes. We will do professional services. We'll come in, we'll do the whole solution for you. And now we're on the hook. So if there is a big security breach later, they can blame us. And they love that. They don't want to get on the call and blame themselves. They want to blame company X sold this, so.
Right. Well, and then I'm sure that also helps earn trust, right, with the customer, because now you're saying, yeah, we'll do it, we'll take the responsibility, so that shows like, man, you have confidence in your product and what you're...
We're so confident that, we can be liable if there's a problem.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So now you're in F5, you're in sales, and now at some point, and I may have gotten the timeline wrong, at some point you co-authored a book.
Yeah, that was actually at F5.
Okay. So what was that process like, and how did that come about?
It was actually pitched to me. That was, I give credit to one of my old managers. He had done something like that at Cisco. And you learn, once you get to these bigger companies, everyone just kind of, it's just like a circle. Everyone moves around from Cisco to Oracle to Google to, it's like a wheel. So he came from Cisco, and he had his team do a book on something for Cisco. And he knew the publisher Wiley, one of the bigger publishers, and he's like, I want to do that again. Who on my team is interested? And I was like, me. Just again, like it won't hurt me at all. It's just going to help me. Like you brought it up, on this talk. It's a good notch on your belt to have a book under your name. So what they do is first you have to. We didn't have a topic. We just knew something in our product line. Like, what can we do? We looked at the landscape. This was, COVID was going on, and we saw a bunch of people were doing like fraudulent things with the different programs where you can get money, like COVID money, basically. Like you can claim whatever, I don't know the specifics, but you can claim different hardships and they'll just give you money. And a lot of like government entities were getting taken advantage of. People around the world found like this state is doing this policy. If you just apply, they don't even verify who you are, write a script that just keeps applying and gives it to different names, but it goes to all the same bank account. Like there was really wide open stuff. So we're like, you know what? We could stop that with a WAF. Let's sell a WAF book or create a WAF book now.
And WAF being is?
Web Application Firewall.
Okay.
So a layer 7 firewall. That way it's topical. Like it made sense at the time, and it's something that we sell. Like we sold it as a service. So it's not only a book that's useful, but if you want to do it, we sell it. And what they do is the publisher actually gives you a technical writer, and they're pretty bright. Like I thought they were just going to be some like proofreading, almost like an editor, but no, they know their stuff. I think they just work with so many different technical companies that they're pretty sharp. But you just basically give them a bulk of content, and they take it and make it into a book for you. So they're just like, tell me everything you know about it, and I'll make it make sense. So I would say they did more work than I did. I just kind of threw a bunch of content at them, like, all the pages, and they cleaned it up, put it in like formatting, broke it down into sections, said, no, you need to move this up to the top. No, you need to move this at the end. Like, this is out of order. Why are you bringing this up now? And they cleaned it up and made it look real. It made you look a lot better than you are. So, hats off to the technical writers at Wiley.
And how long did that process take? So from when you first kind of started gathering your
Fast.
content?
Real fast.
Really?
The hardest part was me, like, taking all day a long time to come up with that content. I'd say that took me about 2.5 months of just doing it while I'm working. I wasn't really trying to get it done. And then I think we set up a call with them like once a month, just to like, where are we at? What do you have? What are we missing? Like, what things do we need to hit? What bullet points? And we didn't even know how long it was going to be, because we don't know. Like, you don't know until you start writing how much content there even is. And it wasn't that long. It was maybe like 50 pages or something. And then they trimmed that way down. Like, they made it way more concise and readable. Once I gave them the content, they had it. I think they were done like a month. So 2.5 months and another month, and then one limited hard published run, and then the rest was all just ebook, like web online stuff. And that's still online.
Nice.
I think. Last time I checked.
Last time I checked. Might have to go Google search for it.
Yeah, Google. It's still there. It still says my name.
Nice. So that's got to be a pretty interesting, right? And like you said, it's a notch under your belt, because now that's something that's publicly visible. Like I talked to another guest on here where what they did is to kind of showcase their knowledge is they went out and built a public website. So now there's something like, hey, I have this book. This is the content I know.
Something you can show.
And you think is that something that you referenced later on in your, like, as you were going through?
I'll read it. If ever I'm working on those type of things, I'll go read my own book. Like, how does this work? And I'm literally looking up stuff that I helped write years ago to use as a reference, because I know it's so concise. I know I could just get right to the point. But I 100% agree with you with having something publicly faceable. If you do any code, if you do anything that you can show it in some way. And it's so easy now with all the different resources online. You can throw your code on GitLab, GitHub. You can throw if you do art, like technical, like graphic design stuff, you can literally just publish stuff on the internet for almost no cost. There's no reason not to. And to have a link on your resume that goes to something real versus saying I did it is an easy way to get to the top of that interview pile. Right.
No, I 100% agree. And like you said, it's minimal cost. I mean, even if you buy a domain, right? If you can find something to create a domain name, I think it's like $18, because I have a couple. It's like $18 a year, right? Like you said, and there's a bunch of hosting places, GitHub, just anything that you're doing, everything else will be free. Oh, that's cool. And so that book also, you reference it. Do you use that? Obviously, you reference it for yourself, like, hey, I want to look something up. But is that something you put on your resume and, moving forward? Is that something?
Yeah, it's on the resume. Just because, again, it looks good. Even if the role I'm applying for has nothing to do with it, it shows some level of competence, like enough to get published is it's rare, I'd say. Not that it's difficult. It's just not very common. So it makes you stand out, even just for the fact. And people always want to hear about it, because who's gone through it? Very few people have gone through that process. So everyone's always curious. I think it's come up on every interview I've had since then. At least usually in a casual way, like, oh, tell me about that. Like, I see this. I clicked on the book, and then it just looks good.
Nice. I'm very intrigued, right? Like, I know some of the things that you kind of talked about, and there's a lot that I picked up along the way. Mm-hmm. We also, you've given tons of good tips. I like the way that you've been very prescriptive about your career, and it sounds like you're still in, there's still a lot of items that we haven't talked about. Some of the teaching, kind of what you're doing now and additional skills that you've picked up. But as we kind of wrap this up, one of the things I want to kind of ask you is, out of all of the kind of skills that you've picked up, tips, tricks, is there anything that really stands out in your mind as like, hey, if I had to leave one specific thing or one piece of advice, what do you think it would be overall, kind of knowing that you've had a pretty successful at least for your standards, right? You've moved up, you've accomplished the goals that you've done. What would you say is the one or two things that, hey, this is something that I recommend somebody do, right? If you have to take this one or two action items.
First, have a plan. Like you're not going to get, like jobs aren't going to come to you. You got to go to them. Promotions aren't going to come to you. Raises aren't going to come to you. You have to go get it. So be proactive. Try to look what other people have done, follow their footsteps, and make a plan that, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but you can use that to come up with your idea of how to do it. But skill-wise, I would say soft skills. I think having soft skills and then having a network of people built off those soft skills are going to be more valuable in the long run. A lot of the jobs I've gotten were either through somebody or somebody who I know somebody who knows somebody kind of thing. And now you still got to come up and interview. So that part's on you. But sometimes it's hard to get to the interview. So if you have those soft skills and you have that relationship with a lot of people, you've met so many different people through the years at different jobs. You might come back on those people later. Like how many people have we run into, especially here in Vegas, it's a small tech town. So many of us know each other or we know other people that know each other. The guy that got me started happened to work with you. Like what is a small world?
Right.
I didn't even talk to him since since back then, but you still talk to him. He helped me a lot. And you need a lot of those people that are going to help you. So having the relationship and having the boldness to go, just ask people. Like I asked him, hey man, what do you do? That's how I got started. So I think anybody could do it.
That's awesome. Well, I know there's a lot of things that we haven't talked about, and I definitely, at some point in the future, I would like to bring you back and continue on the conversation.
Yeah, we'll leave enough meat for part 2.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll have you on again at some point.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Manny.
All right, thanks, Matthew.